Capricorn, this looks like a very interesting reading for the month of February. The central card tells us what it's probably all about, and certainly it runs throughout it. It's the energy of the Ten of Pentacles, probably multiple blessings, but almost certainly happy families. In the past we have the energy of the Knight of Wands. He's brave, he's bold, but he does rush into situations. Your current energy is that of the Hermit, going inside yourself looking for answers. Is this to do with global events? I think we're all looking for answers on that. The future energy is that of the Nine of Wands, which is a reminder that you've been through much adversity before and got through it. Is that what it's trying to tell us? That whatever strange things are happening in the world, you've seen something like it before, you know what energies to use. The energy that leads to the outcome is the King of Wands. He's a wise king, but also a king of action, something of an entrepreneur. He's wise, as I say. The outcome isn't necessarily a great outcome. I'll come to it, but I'm not certain I understand it in the light of that. But what would change the outcome? So we must see the outcome as a good outcome, I think, because what would change the outcome is the energy of the Nine of Swords, which is the energy of nightmares, the energy of being fearful and frightened. We're all a little fearful and frightened at the moment, and I think this is a warning not to be. Quite a few signs are getting this message at the moment. But the outcome is the Eight of Cups, you walking away from something. I don't know what you're walking away from. Are you walking away from families? It doesn't sound plausible, but I'll certainly work it out if you stay with me and try and find out what this is all about. As I say, critical to understanding this reading is the energy of the Ten of Pentacles, an energy of multiple blessings, even though I don't think you're feeling those multiple blessings. An energy of happy families. Is this something you're striving for, or is this because you do later walk away? Is it something you walk away from? I'm not at all sure how to interpret it. I mean, overall, it looks like a good spread, but I'm just perplexed on how to interpret it all at the moment. Maybe it means more to you than it does to me. It does. It is a card of blessings, so I shouldn't discount that. Now, the past energy we have is that of the Knight of Wands. He is bold, he is fearless, but he does tend to get into situations he shouldn't. Have you rushed into a family situation that you're not entirely happy with? That would certainly be one explanation for this, but I don't feel it's the right explanation. I think it's to do with global events. I think you've rushed into something due to global events that maybe you later regret. And you know, there's so much fear porn around at the moment. that I can only conclude is designed to make us panic into doing the wrong thing. And I do feel that you have. Now I have to be honest and say I'm somewhat confused by this spread. But I suspect it reflects your own confusion or your own desire to work out what's happening. Maybe to work out what's happening in the world, but possibly to work out what's happening in the world in relation to you and your family. Because we now have the energy of the Hermit card, which is going inside yourself and looking for answers. And I see that as a very good and responsible thing to be doing. That you're trying to make sense of things by exploring your own subconscious, and very often, well, I say very often, always the answer will lie there ultimately, but we don't always get it right. But if you have rushed into things, then it would explain to you what maybe you have done wrong. So it is a great card to have here. I think maybe you do find the answers inside yourself. And that's because the future energy is that of the Nine of Wands. That's you sort of looking back on your life and saying, oh yeah, I've faced adversity in the past, and this is how I overcame it. So not being fazed by fear, not being fazed by worry. It's not a card that says, this happened in the past and this is how I got out of it. It's more reminding you of the energies you need than the actual actions. So it does come from the subconscious, which you would discover from the Hermit, rather than from the sort of rational conscious brain of saying, this is the objective position, this is what I need to do. It's much more about tapping into energies. So I see it as a good card. It does remind you of how you've struggled with adversity, but you've come through it. The energy that leads to the outcome is the King of Wands. Now, whilst the Knight of Wands does rush into things, get into things maybe he shouldn't, the King's more measured, got far more experience. Yes, he is a person of action, but often those actions are good actions, based on experience. So it is as though you sort of reflected on things as through being a hermit, said, okay, this is what I must do. Is it about putting right what you got wrong as the Knight of Wands? I think it probably is. And I'm beginning to think, because if you remember, the whole thing is about this happy families. I think maybe you've rushed into something that has put the happiness of your family in jeopardy, and you're now determined to right it. I think that's a better explanation of what's happened, but I'm still not sure. Capricorn, there's an energy here that I think I can be much more certain of, particularly in the light of it being an energy, a sort of energy that so many signs are getting right now, in a position like this, and that is a card of nightmares, a card of fears. And I think it's a warning not to allow fear to overtake you. And I wonder if you have rushed into something through fear in the past. And that's what this warning is all about. Because this changes the outcome. And I suspect you've rushed into something that you shouldn't have got into through fear. And this is saying conquer your fears. That's certainly how it feels to me. That you must conquer your fears in order to move on. Because the outcome is you becoming disillusioned with something. And I think you're disillusioned with the action that you took in the past, which was probably born out of fear. And as a result of going inside yourself, looking for answers, you've realised you've done the wrong thing. And you're walking away from it. And now, I'm only giving an illustration at this moment in time. But a good many of us, myself included, are walking away from this reality that's been constructed for us. And I'm determined to do things for myself. I live up a remote mountain in Java, where I grow my own food and medicine. I'm bombarded with digital information, particularly from my banks, on do this, do that. And I'm just not interested. You know, I've no interest. And I think you're getting like that. You're feeling that there's so much in this current society that's wrong, and you're wanting to turn your back on it. But we certainly need some clarification. I've not got the full story here for sure. Now I'm going to get clarity on what you're walking away from, because I think that is the key to it all. And the first card of clarity is the Knight of Swords. A little bit like the Knight of Wands. I'll describe him in fuller detail in a moment, but it is suggesting to me that that Knight of Wands was critical. The next card we have is the Seven of Swords, a card of deception. So you're walking away from deception. And the final card we have is another King of Wands. Yeah, now remember the King of Wands leads to this. So this is you having the knowledge to act in the right way now, I think. Let's look at each individually. Now remember, we're getting clarity on what are you disillusioned with. And the first card of clarity we have is the Knight of Swords. He's very like the Knight of Wands. He's bold, he's brave, and he does tend to rush into things. But whereas the Knight of Wands tends to physically rush into things, the Knight of Swords is more likely to jump to conclusions, the wrong conclusions. So I think you've acted in a way that you're now realising is the wrong way. And it's a way that I believe affects your family and affects it negatively. Is it to do with personal things? It might be. But somehow I suspect it's not. I suspect it's about the happiness of your family and realising that your happiness of your family isn't about material wealth. The next energy of clarity is the Seven of Swords, a card of deception. Now it could be that you've been deceived, or it could be that you're doing the deceiving. It could even be a self-deception, which of course the Knight of Wands would suggest it could well be that. But let's say that you've been involved in deception. Remember, the whole thing is about happy families. Have you been cheating on your partner, thinking you could get away with it? that could well be it. And now you're walking away from this deception. And normally that's the conclusion I'd reach. But you know, there is so much deception in the world now that I see it differently at this moment in time. And that is you realising the massive deception in the world. How we're all like gerbils or hamsters on a wheel, running round and running round this wheel and never achieving anything. Believing that the happiness of our families is dependent on us continuing to play a part in this system, which is ultimately a system of deception. From my own personal view, I look at what's happened in the world. I mean, I'm 65 now, and I look at myself and I say, what have you ever achieved? And the answer is nothing. Nothing. I've tried to lead my life well. I've often been very generous. I've been very charitable. But if I look at it, all I've done is been a cog in a wheel of deception. I've never stood out and done what I really should have done. I've never really worked out my mission in this world. And I think that's the interpretation that makes the most sense to me for you. And we now have the King of Wands again. Remember I said he was wise, a king of action. And remember it was the King of Wands that led to your disillusionment. Do you know, like so many signs, and you know, it's because, yes, the energies will impact on us in different ways, but often the same underlying energies are there for signs. And I'm pretty certain this is the universe saying to us, work out what makes your family happy. Work out where you really want, what you really want, and how to make your family happy. And I think once you've done that, you'll realise it's not continuing to do what you've been doing. You need a change. Maybe not as drastic as living up a remote mountain in Java, but it is going to be probably fairly drastic for you and your family. But you can achieve happiness if only you understand what that would look like. Capricorn, I'm certain this reading is about how global events are affecting you and your family. And like so many signs during this February, it's asking you to reflect on what would make you and your family happy. And almost certainly you're going to conclude it's not by doing the same. In the past, you may be rushed into something, rushed into a situation that actually maybe seemed like the right thing, but is not leading to your family's happiness. And you're acutely aware of this. And you go inside yourself looking for answers. And the answers that you're beginning to find are that you've been doing the wrong thing for so long. You've probably been doing the wrong thing out of fear. So we believe that our family's happiness is dependent on wealth, when really it's probably about spending time with our family, leading a simpler lifestyle. And this is exactly what you're beginning to reappraise. And I think you begin to understand that. But you still have this fear of jumping outside the rat race, as it were. You know, how am I going to pay the school fees? How am I going to pay the rent? How am I going to pay the note on the Lamborghini? But if you really explore inside yourself, that isn't making anybody happy. And no, you become disillusioned with it all. Just as many of us have been. Disillusioned that we've spent our lives chasing false goals, doing exactly the wrong thing, being a part of a system that is ultimately deceptive. And the level of this deception is hitting you now, and you're going to walk away from it. You're going to walk away from it for the sake of your family. And I'm sure you will find happiness. Of course there will be adversity in the future. But you're looking at it and saying, well, you know, I've been through hard times in the past and got through them. And if I look at myself, my life, I have been quite rich and unhappy. And yet my happiest times were often when I had the least money. And I think that's the sort of conclusion you're going to come to, Capricorn. Now, I can't tell you everything's going to be great in the future, but I can say to you, pat yourself on the back because you are taking the first step.